Okay, good evening, everybody. It's about 8:30. We're going to get the meeting started here. If you could find your way to your seats. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Brian, and I am an alcoholic. This is a one-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday, St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street, at 8:30 in Doylestown, PA. The food and the fellowship for this group starts at 8 o'clock. The business meeting for this group meets here every Saturday at 7 p.m. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others can benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. If there's anyone that's new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves on a first-name basis, so we can welcome you. Nobody? No newcomers tonight, huh? How about that? That might be a first, actually. Anyway, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with a working knowledge of the 12 steps and that is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Okay, so I guess we don't have any newcomers, but, you can grab one of those people after the meeting if you're looking for a home group. If you're looking to get into the steps, maybe grab one of those people after the meeting. We'll be hanging out, so... does anybody have any announcements for the good of AA? Nothing from the floor? Okay. A couple of announcements for this group. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books or CDs can put their donations in the jar on that back table marked Big Book and CD Donations. If you would like a CD of any speaker, past or present, you can see Mayor Ron before or after the meeting. They are available free of charge. And with that, I think Sherry's going to come up here and read the AA preamble.
Hi, I'm Sherry, I'm an alcoholic. The AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. I have asked Dan to come up and read the AA 12 Steps of Recovery.
I'm Dan. I'm an alcoholic. These are the 12 steps. Step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Okay, 7th tradition, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting. We'll make sure the basket makes its way around. There are no dues or fees for AA membership, but we do have expenses. Your contributions help us to cover the cost of rent, big books, CDs, refreshments in the back. There's absolutely no smoking on the church property. It's the church's policy, not our policy. If you could just be considerate of that. As you're coming and going, just go across the street, make sure butts end up on the premise here. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. And now to introduce our speaker for tonight, a good friend of the Conscious Contact speaker group on loan to us from the Buy the Book group of Hollywood, Florida. Please help me welcome Pauly D.
Thank you, sir. Hello, family. My name is Pauly D. I'm a recovered alcoholic. And before I start, I'd like to thank my friend Ron for the invitation. Thank the group for having me. There you go. That's why I love him. Always looking out for me. My sobriety date, September 1st, 2002. On that day, God saw fit to separate me from alcohol. I did not quit drinking. I had quit drinking way too many times before that. My experience is that when I quit drinking, I start drinking again. I'm here to share what I was like, what happened, what I'm like now. We're definitely not a glum lot, so I clown around a bit just so that everyone knows I'm a real alcoholic. I drank socially for 10 years, then I turned 13. At that point, I was in the 8th grade. I picked up a bottle of Boone's Farm apple wine, drank to oblivion. They found me blacked out on a bus in the bus depot, got suspended from Catholic school. I became that guy, and I had a reputation I didn't deserve. I lived off it for 34 years, and life was just crazy. I mean, I don't do a drunk a lot. Life, it threw a lot of curveballs my way. I drank a lot. It didn't go well. There's so many war stories. I don't even bother, though. When I wanted to stop drinking, I didn't have the power to do it. I always thought that I could stop. I told people, I'll stop when I want to stop. And that was the problem. I never wanted to stop. I enjoyed alcohol. If I were to stand there and tell you I hate alcohol, I'm a liar. I love alcohol. I love the effect produced by alcohol. What's happened is, and you'll hear about it in my story, is I love the effect produced by God a lot more. Because I haven't quit drinking. What I did was, I did not come to Alcoholics Anonymous to get sober. You're going to hear a lot of stories. My story might not agree with your story, and that's all right. There'll be another speaker next week. The truth of the matter is, it's my story, and I'm going to tell it. And if you disagree, that's fine. But here's the deal: I will not share my opinion from a podium ever. The only opinion that we care about in Alcoholics Anonymous is the doctor's opinion. My opinion, your opinion means nothing. So if you're sitting up here sharing your opinion, please stop. We don't care. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to carry this message. And that's what I try to do. And like I said, I drank a lot, didn't go well. I am a one-chip wonder. I came in on September 1st and I never picked up another white chip. But here's the deal. I've relapsed hundreds of times. In Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't believe that drinking is the relapse. See, the relapse is when I start lying, cheating, stealing, and abusing my friends, my family. And when the pain gets great enough, I pick up a drink and I go, because drinking treats alcoholism. I wish someone would have told me that when I got here. I don't have a problem with alcohol. If you have a problem with alcohol, God bless you. Then go home, stop drinking. You'll be okay. I'm a real alcoholic. I have a problem without alcohol. It's when I stop drinking that I become restless, irritable, discontent, prey to misery, depression, full of remorse and self-pity, and a drink is such a good idea because it works. I take the first, I don't even sip it, I put it in my hand and I go, and then I take a drink and it goes down, and I overshoot the mark every time. I'm going to have 1 or 2, and 36 later when I fall down and they drive me home in an ambulance, I overshot the mark again. Alcohol works. The deal was that, I have no power over alcohol. Every time I tried to quit drinking, even while I was drinking, I thought I was choosing to drink. Like on a Friday night, I'd say, I'm just going to go to meet the guys and have 1 or 2. I got work tomorrow. And then when I got to the bar, my ex-girlfriend was there and I bought her a drink. We shot a game of pool and she lost, so she bought me a drink. Then we played a game of darts and I won and I bought her a drink. And it's 4 o'clock in the morning and the cops are there. I'm getting arrested again. because my ex-girlfriend was married, of course, That was the way I lived while I was out there. And what happened is, I had chose to have 1 or 2 drinks. The drink wasn't the problem. Lack of power is my dilemma. I did not have the power to carry out the choice I made to not drink, or just to have 2. See, the deal is when people tell me just don't drink, go to meetings, that might be the dumbest sentence in the world. Because if I had the power to not drink, I would not drink and not go to meetings. When I choose to not drink, I drink anyway. So that's why I'm here. If you could choose to not drink and pull that off, why would you be here? It doesn't make sense. When I got here, and no one in AA has ever said anything or done anything to try to intentionally cause me harm, but don't believe anything you hear from a podium. Don't believe what you hear me say from a podium, unless I can show it to you in a book. This book is Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I got here, they told me stuff like, just don't drink, go to meetings. Make 90 and 90. Meeting makers make it. And I went to 400 meetings in my first 105 days. And on my 105th day, I almost committed suicide. Because I had not treated my alcoholism. I just stopped drinking. Not drinking doesn't treat alcoholism. Drinking treats alcoholism. So once I stopped, I was living with untreated alcoholism in the rooms of alcohol. And they didn't say it to harm me. They didn't know better. You don't know what you don't know. So I tell everyone that I sponsor, first question that you ask someone that makes a statement from a podium is, what page is that on? And if they can't tell you what page it's on, what usually happens is when I ask someone what page is on, they'll say, well, it's not in the book, but. And then I stop them and I say, wait a minute, everything after but needs toilet paper. Because that's just the truth. Here's the deal. If it's not in our book, it's not Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not going to tell you if it's a good idea or a bad idea. I don't know. 90 and 90, is it a good idea or a bad idea? I have no idea. I couldn't make 90 and 90. When they told me to make 90 and 90, I only made 88 and I thought I failed. So don't tell people make 90 and 90. Take them to 90 meetings in 90 days if you got so much belief that 90, take them to 90 and 90 if that's what you believe. But my experience was that those meetings did not treat my alcoholism. I had 105 days almost, sitting in a meeting, contemplating suicide. I just didn't want my mom to know I killed myself. If I could have figured out a way, I might have tried to pull it off. And I shared that at the meeting, and someone grabbed me. And I remember it like it's yesterday. I actually just spoke to the gentleman who helped save my life. What happened was I shared that, and the kid that was chairing the meeting said, could I talk to you after the meeting? And I said, yeah, sure. After the meeting, I went up to him, and I'll never forget. He looked at me straight, and he said, have you done the work? And I was like, well, yeah, I got a coffee commitment. And he said, no, but are you in the work? And I'm like, I chaired a Tuesday night meeting. And he's like, Paul, have you done the work in our textbook? Now, I didn't even know he had a textbook, He said, yeah, the big book, I said, well, I read that, but I couldn't find step 1 and step 2. I found step 3. So I bought a 12 and 12. And he laughed, and he said, great book. He said, but no directions. And again, I'm not here to knock you. If you're doing your steps through the 12 and 12, God bless you. But here's the deal. The 12 and 12 has no directions in it. The 12 and 12 is a bunch of stories about the steps. There's great information in that book, along with the textbook of Alcoholics Anonymous. And just for fun, to let everybody know, it's not really a textbook. This is really a storybook. I found that out last year. In the front of the book, it says, Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. Then in the preface, it says, since this book has become the basic text for Alcoholics Anonymous. So it wasn't written as a textbook. There were no meetings. It was written so that other alcoholics could identify with the stories in the back of the book. Because it was mail order sobriety. If you lived in Virginia and you wanted to get sober, you'd call New York. They'd send you the book. You'd send them $3.50. And they would tell you, listen, do what the book asks you to do. And in the forward, it's what it says is, we'd love to hear from those who are getting results from this book. Especially those who have started work with other alcoholics. So the idea was that the book There were no meetings. You couldn't do 90 and 90. There were no sponsors, so you couldn't get a sponsor to take you through. They used the book to get sober. So when I sponsor people, I never tell anybody what to do, because again, I'm going to refer to the book a lot. The book says, if you're an alcoholic who wants to get over it, this is what happened to me. You might already be asking, what do I have to do? And when I asked that of the gentleman who helped me, he said, I don't know. And I don't know what any one of you need to do to get sober or stay sober. I know what I did and what I continue to do. So the book says we will show you what we have done. So all I'm going to share with you is what I've done and what I still continue to do. Because for me to think that I can tell you what to do is total stupidity. One more time, I can't run my own life. What would make me think I could run yours? And I love sponsors that run their sponsors' lives. You better do this, you better do that. I need you to make 90 and 90. I want you at this meeting. Get a coffee commitment. Whoa, I didn't sign up for that. I'm here to share my experience. That's what the book asked me to do. If you don't want it, that's okay. If I want what they got, I'll do what they did. My experience has been that the closer I stay to the clear-cut specific directions in this book, the easier it is to be in a relationship with God. Being in that relationship with God makes it easier to live my life. And I don't have to live life on life's terms anymore. I live life on God's terms now. And that makes life so simple. What does that mean? It means that I'm out of the results business. I give the best effort that I possibly can to whatever I'm doing at any given moment, and I leave the results up to God. They're none of my business. If I help someone tonight, great. And if I don't, that's great too. God's plan was for me to be here, and here I am. So let's talk about my story. So with 105 days contemplating suicide, that gentleman that I spoke to said, let me show you something. And he opened up not this book, it was his book. And he opened it up to page 45, and he read the sentence to me that said, lack of power. That was our dilemma. And I said to him, wait a minute, I thought alcohol was my problem. And he said, well, how long has it been since you had a drink? I said, 105 days. He said, how do you feel? Please excuse my language, I'm going to tell you exactly what I said. I feel like shit, is what I said. And I'm contemplating suicide. How do you think I feel? And he said, well, then obviously alcohol's not your problem. You haven't had a drink in 105 days. And I scratched my head. I went, oh. And all of a sudden, I realized, what's going on? I guess and I thought it was just, if I stopped drinking, I thought everything was going to be okay. And if you stop drinking and everything's okay, God bless you. I'm very, very happy for you. But that probably means you're not an alcoholic. You have a problem with alcohol. And you stop drinking, everything's okay. I stop drinking, it doesn't get better, it gets worse. Because living life, my God was the God of reason. I use my head. I got this. I'll figure this out. Then when something bad would happen, that's when God came to life. God, why'd you do that? God got blamed for every bad thing that ever happened to me in my life. I got credit for every good thing that happened to me my whole life. So we started to read this book, and like I said, there's no right way, there's no wrong way to do the steps. I want to explain that. I don't believe right way and wrong way. I don't believe in the words right and wrong anymore. Because what's right to one person might be wrong to someone else. I don't believe that this is a bad thing and this is a good thing. It's just a thing. And it's going to be what it's supposed to be. But I know that I had to find a new way of life. Because my way of life was not working. So Alcoholics Anonymous is not something that you do. A lot of people seem to think that they can do the steps. I've done the 12 steps. And then you already failed. Because the steps are not something that can be done. The steps are a way of life. And again, the book says, our way of living has its advantages for all. It doesn't say quitting drinking has advantages for all. In Bill's story, there's I don't know where it is, it might be, but in one of the pieces of the book talks about a guy that could not or would not see our way of life. He committed suicide. It doesn't say he couldn't stop drinking. More alcoholics commit suicide sober than drunk. Because when they start thinking about suicide, they take 2-3 drinks. Bill talks about it. This is how we know alcohol's not the problem. Bill says, should I kill myself? No, not now. A few tumblers of gin would fix that. So alcohol is not the problem. Alcohol is the solution. If alcohol is your problem, you're in the wrong spot. Stop drinking, you'll be okay. And there's a lot of people in AA that can do that. It's sad to say, not everyone in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous is an alcoholic. And I know that for a fact. I've sponsored many that aren't. And I will sponsor people that aren't, but I will ask them not to sponsor other alcoholics. I send them off to their own fellowships. We have a lot of fellowships that use these 12 steps to help people recover from whatever their problem is. And again, it's in the book. The spiritual way of life will solve all your problems. That's my experience. I haven't had a problem in years, not one. All my problems are on the outside of my eyes. No, sorry, all the problems are on the inside of my eyes. None of my problems are on the outside of my eyes. See, that's the thing. I look at it, I think it's a problem, but it's not. It's how I react. That's the problem. The problem is in here. Because everything on the outside of my eyes, that's on God. That ain't on me. If I've done the best I can, okay. I didn't have that way of life for many years. Alcohol did that for me. It didn't matter what was going wrong. I had 3 drinks, I could solve any problem in the world. I was talking around about it, I knew how to fly planes, fix tanks. I could help you sail a boat around the world. And I never been on a boat. But that's what alcohol did. It did everything. Taught me how to dance. Taught me how to have a girlfriend. We won't get there, but it taught me how to do everything I ever needed to do. And it worked really wonderfully till it didn't work anymore. You know, and the book talks about that. It says you'll come to a place where you can't live with alcohol and you can't live without alcohol. I remember that day. I remember the day that I knew I could not take one more drink. I was going to die. And alcohol brought me to a lot of drugs and sorry places. And, you know, I did a lot of stuff. Outside issues, I don't talk about them here. I do go to other fellowships occasionally, but alcohol is my master. Alcohol was always my master. You know, Bill talks about that too. And so what happened on that day was, you know, that gentleman explained about step 1 to me. What he said was, do you understand step 1? I said, yeah, I can't drink no matter what. Because that's what they had been telling me for 3.5 months. He said, Paul, if that was the first step, we'd have a 1-step program. Don't drink no matter what. He says, let's look at your life. He said, do you drink when it's nice weather? And I said, yeah. Do you drink when it's raining? Yeah. He said, do you drink when you got money? Yeah. You drink when you got no money? I said, if I can. You know. He said, do you drink when you're with a beautiful woman? I said, yeah. Hey, you drink when you're with an ugly woman? I said, twice as much. I'm honest. But the truth is, we look back at my life. I drink. It's what I do. I don't need a reason. I drank because it was Tuesday. I drank because the day ended in Y. It didn't matter. Thursday, Wednesday, it made no difference. I got up in the morning. It was my way of life. So he explained step 1, and he made it real simple. He said, step 1 says you're going to drink, no matter what. If you don't have a new solution, you will drink again. Step 1 says you will drink. It doesn't say you can't drink. And the second half of step 1, I did not understand. I thought Paulus was the bad part. And he said, no, your life's unmanageable. I said, I know, whenever I'm drunk, I'm getting arrested, I'm getting in fights, hospitals. And he said, no, that's not unmanageability. He said, that would happen to any idiot that drank the way you drank, whether he's alcoholic or not. He said, the most unmanageable thing you've ever done, you've done sober. And I said, you don't know me. He said, no, I do know you. He said, how many times have you picked up the first drink again, saying it'll be different this time? That's the unmanageability. I can't manage life with or without alcohol. My life is unmanageable today if I try to manage it. I needed a new manager. That's what AA is about. Me running my life doesn't work. I had to give up the management position and give it to God. So he asked me if I understood step 2, and I thought I did. And he said, Paul, let me explain. And it took me years to finally actually understand it. You don't have to do step 2. If you read step 2, it doesn't tell you what to do. It tells you what happened to them after they did the steps. We came to believe that a power greater than us could restore us to sanity. That happened after they did the steps. So you don't do step 2 when you're at step 2. Step 2 happened to me around step 9 or 10. That's just my experience. So step 2 is something that you concede to. I'm willing to do this. And with the attitude of willingness, from step 2 forward, God provides everything else. See, willingness is an action word. If you say you're willing to help clean up after this meeting, but you don't help us clean up, you lied. Just that simple. And I didn't know that willing was an action word. So he asked me some stuff about God, and I had beliefs in God. I always believed in God. But that God wasn't going to work, because I had a couple of different gods. I had the God that was going to get me, when I was a kid. God's got a book, he's marking. He saw that, you got a red mark. And I thought there was like 17 pages with my name and red marks. Not one black mark on it, just red marks. I should have been blind by the time I was 13. The nuns told me, God saw that, And then my parents didn't help. God's watching you. And then I'd fall down and I'd scratch my leg and I'd get some stitches or something. I said, see, God got you. That's what they did. They didn't know better. They just didn't know better. I didn't want nothing to do with that God. So goodbye. 8th grade, I had a fight, got in a lot of trouble. I hit a nun. I hit a priest. I got thrown out of Catholic school. Way too long of a story to get into. But the truth was, at that point, the next day was my first real drunk. 13 years old, on a bus with a bottle of Boone's Farm apple wine. And it took me years in sobriety before I realized my first drunk was the day after I put God out of my life. So what happened was that God wasn't going to work. And then as life went on, again, every time I'm in handcuffs on Friday night, I said, God, please get me out of this one. So I always believed God was there. And then if he would get me out, I'd do the same thing I did the week before again. I'd swear I was never going to do it again. But lack of power was my dilemma. I did not have the power to pull that off. So we made a decision to kneel down and do a 3rd step prayer. Probably 35 minutes after he started talking to me. And we knelt down, we said the 3rd step prayer, and we got up. I said amen. He said, don't say amen. I said, why? Always say, don't say amen. There's no amen at the end of the 3rd step prayer. And I said, why not? He said, you'll find out later. And so will you when I get to it. But, so I didn't say amen. I got up off my knees and I said, I did the 3rd step. He said, no, you did the 3rd step prayer. And he said, the 3rd step is a decision. I said, I just decided. He said, Paul, I was living in New York at the time. He said, if we decide to go to Florida, you think we'll ever get there? I said, yes. He said, no. I said, why not? He said, Paul, we got to call the airline, buy a ticket, pack a suitcase, go to the airport, and get on the plane. If we don't take those actions, we never made a decision. We thought about going to Florida. So if you don't take the actions in steps 4 through 9, you thought about turning your will and your life over to God, but you never did it. You didn't make a decision. To complete a decision requires action. So I said, okay, that sounds interesting. I said, but I'm not sure about this 4th and 5th step thing. I'm not sure I want to write all the bad stuff and, see what kind of a person I was. He said, no. He said, we're not going to do the 4th step to see what kind of person you were. He said, we know what you were. You were an alcoholic. He said, we're going to do the 4th step so we could see what you weren't. And I got, again, baffled. I was baffled a lot. I got baffled again. I'm like, what do you mean what I wasn't? And he said, well, were you a good son? He said, well, were you a good brother? And he kept asking, were you a good friend? Were you a good employee? And the answer was no. He said, well, God intended you to be all of those things. Let's see if we can find out why you weren't able to be what God intended you to be. I said, all right, I could do that. So I started writing a 4-step inventory. Again, there's no right way or wrong way to do it. My experience is, the closer I stay to the directions in the book, the easier it is. I'm not going to go into a whole 4th step with you, but I am going to share this. For many years, I wrote a 4-column inventory, and there is no 4-column inventory in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a 3-column inventory. Who am I mad at? Why? What did they do? And what does it affect? That's what it says. And I was told, well, you need that 4th column. What was your part? That's a lie. It's not in our book anywhere ever you should write a 4th column, what was your part, ever. Because here's the deal, who else has a part in my inventory? Nobody. And it says so right in the book. You know, I used to know all of this stuff by heart, but I have a lot of senior moments. But on page 67, what it says, referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others have done, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes, not for my part. See, I had been writing, Mom was first on my list. Threw me out, called me a junkie, changed the locks. What was my part? Well, she told me to be in before midnight or she was changing the locks. I got home 12:15. I'm 15 minutes late and she changed the locks. She changed the locks. I can't. And I'm like, but it didn't help me to get any satisfaction. But then with about 5.5 years sober, I got a new teacher. He said, you don't have a part. He said, what mistakes did you make with your mom? He said, forget about the resentment. And that's what the book says. Set aside the wrongs others have done. So I had lied to my mother, stole from my mother, abused my mother, disrespected my mother, worried my mother. We can go on. And when I saw all the mistakes I had made with my mother through my life, nothing to do with that resentment, I was like, oh my God, she should have thrown me out 10 years ago. See, I got some understanding when I started doing what the book told me to do. Not what a sponsor told me to do. What the book told me to do. This sponsor was book related. He told me page and paragraph in the book. And my experience has been, the closer I stay to that, the easier it is to recover from alcoholism. So I did this 4th step, and I wrote it all out. There's a couple of other inventories. One's not really an inventory. There is no fear inventory. People writing 4-column, 5-column fear inventory. The book says we reviewed our fears. We put them on paper even though we had no resentment. We asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed? Self-reliance was good as far as it went. It didn't go far enough. So the idea of the fears, and it tells me, we trust and rely on infinite God rather than our finite self. And it gives me a prayer. It says when they crop up, we ask God at once to remove them, and we turn our thoughts to someone we can help. The directions are in the book. And then there's a sex inventory. It has nothing to do with sex. The sex inventory has nothing to do with sex. It has to do with my morals around sex. It says, what it says in the book, it doesn't say none of that. It says we reviewed our conduct over the years past. 6 years in, when I did this, when I finally got a new teacher, now like I said, I wasn't doing it wrong, I was doing it different for the first 5 years. When I did sex inventory, he explained to me my favorite story was a girl that I was attracted to. She was a little younger than me, but her brother was about my age. Now, I wasn't in her circle. I didn't really like her brother. He hung out with my little brother. But I befriended her brother. I made him think I loved him. I took him out when I had a car, he didn't. Took him driving, bought him drinks. And he finally invited me over for a barbecue and a pool party at his house. So now I met his sister and his family, and then I started dating his sister. And the minute I stopped dating his sister, I dropped him like a hot rock. He's on my inventory. See, because I was dishonest toward him. I was inconsiderate toward him. And those are the questions it asks. Just so that maybe I could have sex with his sister. So it's not about the sex. It's about my conduct. How did I let sex change the way I lived? And it was horrible. Some of the stuff I did to my friends and their families so that I could get involved with someone else that was their ex-wife, their ex-girlfriend, whoever it was. But our conduct is what we're reviewing. I thought it was about all the girls I had sex with. I was going to make like a 400-page list because I thought I was going to write the best inventory ever. Not a great idea. But I did that, and then I shared it with someone in 5. Because a solitary self-appraisal is usually insufficient. That's what the book says. And after the 5th step, I love the 5th step promises. When I sponsor people, once they get through that, we do 5, 6, and 7 in one day. Once we do their 5th step, and by the end of that night we've been through 7, it's time for me to send them out, and start looking for prospects and stuff like that. And the reason I say that is because on page 76, I love what our book says. Well, first let me go back to 75. The promise is in the 5th step. It says, once we've taken this step withholding nothing, we are delighted, we can look the world in the eye, we can be alone, perfect peace and ease. Fears fall from us, we begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. Here it is. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. This is the beginning of the spiritual experience. The book says you can't give away something you haven't got. At this point, if you've done everything, you've begun to have a spiritual experience. Go start helping people. Why are you going to wait? Why are you going to wait? And then when it tells me to go home for an hour, sit quietly, it gives me these great directions. Find a place where you can be alone. Thank God from the bottom of your heart that you know Him better. Now, most people I know don't do that. I think it's a great idea to actually say, thank you, God. Thank you for allowing me to know you better. The book says I should do it. I do it. Why? I don't know, because the book says I should do it. And I believe that if I do, the book is divinely inspired. And I try to do what it asks me to do. Then on page 76, it says, if we can answer to our satisfaction, then we look at step 6. Whose satisfaction? I'm sitting home alone, reviewing the first 5 proposals. So it's me and God. It's not me and my sponsor. It's not me and my home group. It's me and God. This is the point where I should be letting go of my sponsor's hand just a little bit and grabbing onto God's hand a little bit tighter. I need to start relying on God. This is not a sponsor-reliant program. It is a God-reliant program. So I still do not understand, with quite a few 24s under my belt, why I hear so many people with double-digit years still say they don't do anything without checking with their sponsor. It makes 0 sense to me. My sponsor is just a drunk. My sponsor is just another drunk. We commence shoulder to shoulder. My sponsor is no better than me. I am no better than anyone I sponsor. They're exactly the same. They're as close to God as I'll ever be. See, that's the difference. I just might be a little more awake than them. But the truth of the matter is, I don't get closer to God. Deep down within every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. He's here. I don't have to get rid of all of this stuff to let God in. God was there before I drew my first breath. I got to get all this stuff out of the way so God can come out, so that I can act more like God would have me. It's not about letting Him in. And I had to learn that, and it took me time. So after step 5, 6 and 7, 1 paragraph each, but they're 2 of the most important steps in my life. Step 6, how do I show God that I'm entirely ready to have Him remove these defects? Well, the chapter is called Into Action. What action will I take? I found out that I'm dishonest, I'm selfish, I'm self-seeking, a lot of other stuff. But if I find out I'm selfish, God's just not going to remove my selfishness. God will do for me what I cannot do for myself. In step 6, the way I show God that I would like Him to remove my selfishness is by starting to do some selfless acts. Act selfless. God, please remove my dishonesty. Nothing happens. If I start acting honest, God will remove my dishonesty as He sees fit. So there's a lot of work for me to do in step 6. Step 6, God needs me. Step 7, I need God. Because in step 7, we say a prayer. The prayer says, God, my Creator, I know you have all of me, the good and the bad. I don't know what's good and what's bad. If it feels good, doesn't mean it's good. If it feels bad, does not mean it's bad. Like I said, it just is. I pray that you now remove me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Not every defect of character. The ones that stand in the way. See, God uses defects to move me where He needs me to be. And that's personal experience. Early recovery, it's one of my favorite stories. One of my worst defects. I had many, many lust issues. And with 5.5 years sober with my new teacher, I was praying and working so hard, asking God to help me. Please remove this, please remove this. But yet I went to a meeting and there was a flyer. And the flyer had a picture of a girl laying on a coffee table on a telephone. I I said, oh, let me grab that. So I grabbed that flyer, and I went to that meeting. And there was a cute girl at that meeting. She sounded like she might have been in the book, and I saw her looking at me while I was speaking. She was nodding her head. I said, I think I'm going to come back here next week, get her number. And I went back there the next week. She didn't want to give me her number, but she said, I would love it if you would take me through the book. So I agreed to take her through the book, and she started to get better. And what happened was her sister noticed her getting better. Her sister asked her if she could have my number. She gave her sister my number. Her sister asked me to take her through the book. Her sister had more time than I did. She just wanted a new experience. And now she's my wife. See, God used my lust to move me to that meeting, to that girl, to her sister. And we went through this book together, and what happened was we fell in love with the God that we found inside of each other. And we got engaged, we got married, and we've been together 13 years. And we do this. We work for God together. That's what we do. So step 6, I do a lot. Step 7, I say the prayer. And at the end of the prayer, it says amen. That's why we didn't say amen in the 3rd step prayer. Because you're living in prayer from 3 all the way to 7. I'm living in prayer. Don't say the prayer. Be the prayer. Saying a prayer doesn't change a lot. I don't pray so God can hear me. I used to think I pray so God knows the prayers I'm going to say tonight when I go home. I pray so that I can hear me. God knows my prayers. I pray so I can be reminded that God's got this. I don't pray for me so that God can get me stuff. I pray so that I can remember that God's there. God's in charge. I love people who say, well, God's my co-pilot. You better change seats. Yes. God was my co-pilot for a long time. I kept crashing. Now God's my pilot. I don't drive anymore. And it works a lot better. So at the end of 7, I say the prayer, and it says, now we need more work. Faith without works is dead. And step 8 and step 9. And step 8 says we had a list. We made it when we took inventory. So you don't have to make an 8-step list. It should be from your 4th step. My experience is I had to add some names to it. There were people, we call it, the people that I work with, my lineage, we call it the harms other than. People we harmed other than the people on our inventory. I stole a bicycle from the kid that lived next door to me 3 times. He wasn't on my inventory. I had no resentment. He wasn't on my second, but I harmed him. So I had to make a list of people I hurt. And we become willing to make amends to them all. Step 8 is a complete step. I struggled for a long time separating 8 and 9. They are not the same. They are totally different. My freedom came in step 8. Once I became willing to make amends to them all. It does not mean I have to make amends to them all. I have to be willing to make amends to them all, if it's possible. As long as step 9 will tell me when not to do that. But once I became willing to make the amends to them all, I heard a gentleman, some of you might know him, Don P. Don P. has passed. I heard Don speak, and he talked about he was in jail, possibly for life. And when he went through the steps, he said to his sponsor, well, how am I going to do these amends? And his sponsor told him, sit in a chair, make believe the person's on the other chair in front of you, and do the best you can. He said, if you ever get out of jail, go look for these people. And what Don said was he was freer in that 6x8 cell than he had ever been in his life. And I get it. I get it. I didn't have to take a different route home. Didn't have to cross the street when I saw people walking toward me. The freedom came in step 8. Step 9 says we'll know a new freedom and a new happiness. See, there's no cap. It goes as high as you want it to. How free do you want to be? So step 8, I become willing to make amends to them all. And then step 9, we make amends wherever possible, not whenever. I love you to say whenever possible. No, not whenever possible. Wherever possible. Big difference in those 2 words. If it's possible, you need to make that amends. It says some people cannot be seen. We write them an honest letter. There's a lot of different ways to do this, and I'm not here to do your 9th step. But the truth of the matter is, I love you to talk about, well, I made indirect amends, or I'm making a living amends. What page is that on? There's no such thing as living amends. Do you think that living right now makes amends for all the things you did while you're out there drinking? No. Let's go ask the people we heard about that. What does it mean to make amends? I didn't know. I thought it meant, and the other part I love, a lot of people say, well, we don't say we're sorry. Yes, we do. The book says we let them know we are sorry. It's in the book. But it says a simple "I'm sorry" just won't fill the bill. See, to amend is to change. We amend our Constitution. Hopefully when we change it for the better. So if I am going to make amends, I need to be a changed person. If I'm the same person that walked in here, and I come to you and say, look, I'm sorry, I stole that $100, here's your money back, and I go steal $100 from somebody else next week, that was not an amends, that was an apology. To make amends means to change. So I need to be a changed person. The book also talks about we have to set right the wrong. See, there's two parts to step 9. Making amends is only one part. That means I don't live that way anymore. I don't do those things. I don't lie, steal, cheat on my wife. I don't abuse people. I don't disrespect people. But that's not the only piece, because later it says we have to set right the wrong. That's the direct amends. The amends is that I've changed. There are some people I can't see, but I've made amends because I don't steal from anyone anymore. I don't steal. If I steal a pencil, I think about it for 2 weeks. I got to bring it back. It's horrible. It's horrible, But it's a good way to be horrible. But the truth of the matter is, I also have to set right the wrong to the best of my ability. And I've been taught to ask. I know I harmed you because I did steal that $100 you accused me of stealing. Is there anything else I did wrong that has affected you, and how can I make that right? And you know what she said when I asked her that? She said, I think you owe my daughter an amends. I said, your daughter, she was 3. She said, yeah. She said, but that $100 was for her birthday gift that year, and she didn't get a gift because you stole every penny I had. See, so I think I know what I did. I think I know what I did. I don't. So I owe her daughter an amends. And the privilege that God allows me to have is that the child was 13, because it was 10 years later when I went and made that amends. And from 13 to 18, I went and visited them every year on that kid's birthday. And I got to bring her a birthday gift every year. And it was a privilege. It wasn't the amends. The amends was the first year. And the amends was that I don't live that way anymore. But setting it right, I gave her mother $100, I bought the kid a gift. But I got the privilege of being in their life for like another 5 years. And that's so cool. That's what we get to do. I don't have to do any of this stuff. I get to do this. I don't have to be here speaking. I don't have to go to meetings. I don't have to sponsor people. I get to. What a privilege. So I start making these amends in step 9, and we got all these great promises. New freedom, new happiness. Funny part is, if you read the promises and you add a sentence, anyone that's heard Joe and Charlie probably knows this. Because when I take a few drinks, I'll know a new freedom and a new happiness. When I take a few drinks, life will take on new meaning. Everything that's in those promises came true when I drank. Because alcohol was a power greater than me. I will not worry about the past, regret none of it, because alcohol worked. But now, I get those promises without drinking. So after the promises, it says they will always materialize if we work for them. So there's no gift in Alcoholics Anonymous. For some reason, people are confused. They think that they get the gift of sobriety. Thank God for the gift of sobriety. So what are you saying? That God would give me the gift of sobriety, but not the rest of his children? I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I'm going to back it up with the book. A gift is something given freely. On page 14 in our book, it says, simple, not easy. A price must be paid. There goes the gift. It meant the destruction of self-centeredness. I must turn in all things to the Father of light who presides over us all. So if I'm not willing to turn in all things, not just my alcohol, my life is none of my business. And thank God for that. Because when my life was my business, I bankrupted it. So when I paid that price, then I get sobriety. Now here's the deal. I'm not talking about being sober. Being sober is horrible. I have an allergic reaction to being sober. I need a drink. But sobriety is different. Sobriety is a way of life. I live happy, joyous, and free, 24/7, 365 days a year, without problems, because the problems are none of my business. Everything is perfect in God's world, whether I think so or not. And what happens is usually when things don't go the way I think they should, my wife says it all the time, God is good all the time, even when I don't think so. Especially when I don't think so. Because what usually happens is like 6 months later, after I get mad at God for something that didn't go my way, I go, oh my God, thank God that didn't go the way I wanted it to. That's what usually happens. Like I wanted to do this and didn't work out that way. I mean, I shouldn't even be here right now. I'm supposed to be in an RV camper somewhere. My truck broke down. You know what? Here we are. God's plan, perfect. And all of that happens if I work for it. And then we go into step 10. I love step 10. It says this thought brings us to step 10. So I can't even get to step 10 on my own. I need that thought. The thought is that I have to work for the promises. And step 10 is not something you do at night. And it's not a nightly inventory. There is no nightly inventory. Step 10 says we continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear. Watch being the key word. When they crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. So when do I do step 10? At once. Right here, right now. I'm about to park my car and I'm in the middle of two spots because I'm late. And I notice I'm in the middle. Do I go back to the car and move over so someone else can park? Or do I say, don't worry about it, they'll find another parking spot. And I just stay selfish. Instead, I go back to the car, I move it over. I was watching. I wasn't selfish. Girl hands me change of a 20, I gave her a 10. Do I keep the $10 and write about it tonight? Or do I say, excuse me, I think you gave me too much money. I don't want to be dishonest. I don't want to be selfish. I am watching. If I am doing step 10 properly, I won't have a lot of writing to do. Because I watch for these things. Same way I watch for potholes. I try to avoid them. I hit a few now and then. Same thing with this. I hit a few now and then. I'm not perfect. There is so much more. I don't have enough time. But step 10's about now. And there is so much more in step 10. Pause. When agitated or doubtful. If I'm agitated, it's coming from my emotions. If I'm doubtful, it's coming from my mind. Two places I don't belong. Two places I don't belong. When God's running my life, I'm not agitated or doubtful. If I'm agitated or doubtful, I'm running my own life again. And I need to look at that. Pause. It saved me more times than I can tell you. And then step 11 says, I love step 11. One of my favorite steps, I guess they're all my favorite steps, but it says we're now at step 11. Better men than us are using it. It suggests prayer and meditation. Better men than us are using it. It works. If we have the proper attitude and work at it. What is the proper attitude? Prayer is prayer, right? Well, no. My teacher said to me, how's your prayer life? I said, the first thing I do is I get up in the morning. I said, God, please keep me sober today. And he looked at me, he said, why? Who are you? Why should God keep you sober? Does he work for you? And I was like, He said, Paul, you're supposed to be working for God. Maybe you should ask God what you would do for him instead of telling him what you think he should do for you. And I started praying with a different attitude. And I had to work at it. And when I had the proper attitude and started to work at it, prayer started to work. And it's just my experience. There is so much more. I got a few minutes, but, my life today is an amazing life. I haven't had a problem in years. I very rarely worry. I'm not going to say I never worry. Very rare, because people ask me, do you trust God? I say yes. He said, well, then what are you worrying for? The minute I start to worry means I'm not trusting God. I don't worry much anymore. I know God. I don't worry about who the president is. I know the king. And it doesn't matter who the president is. And the truth of the matter is, when you get to live this way, there is a freedom that is beyond my explanation. That's what this book promises me. It doesn't promise me about drinking. So there's no directions on how to stop drinking. It promises me a freedom. And that's what I have today. I can go anywhere, do anything. When we got married, that's quite a few years ago, but when we got married, we had 160 people. 80 of them were from AA and 80 were family. And there was alcohol on every table. One person relapsed. a new person that just wasn't doing what we do. Alcohol is not the problem. And it's so important that I make people know that. I mean, not drinking is important, but not drinking is a side effect of living a God-centered life. I don't have the power to not drink. And then step 12, without step 12, I have nothing. Because the truth of the matter is the first 11 steps are not the work. I thought doing the steps was the work. I told people, I've been through the work, but I never sponsored anybody. See, the first 11 steps are the process. Page 25 says these things are required for the successful consummation of the process. And then the work begins. Bill says the two set to work frantically upon other alcoholics. So the work is when I start taking others through the steps. And that's what keeps me sober. There's a sentence in this book, and it's only recently, a few months back, I read it and God just struck me. And it was the book says, he might be convinced that he can't do this alone. And I thought that meant that he needed a sponsor. But that's a lie. You don't need a sponsor. It's a lot easier with a sponsor. But you don't need a sponsor. What you need is a sponsor. If you don't got someone to help, you'll never stay sober. Never. That's what Bill didn't go to help Dr. Bob. Please understand that. Bill was going to drink. And when Bob said, what do you think you're going to say that's going to help me? I'm a doctor. I'm a religious man. Bill said, I didn't come here to help you. Bill was thinking about drinking. He knew he needed to help another alcoholic so he would not drink. My sponsorship is perfect. I haven't had a drink in 19 years. Doesn't matter if they drink. I don't sponsor them to get them sober. If they get sober, it's between them and God. But without step 12, the rest of it's useless. And on page 14 in Bill's story again, what he says is, my friend promised when these things were done, I would have a new relationship with my Creator. And then later on it says, it was imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works is dead. And for us, it's just like that. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, let's take a second to thank Pauly again. Thank all our speakers. All our speakers come here at their own time and expense. You came all the way up from Florida just for you guys. It's customary for us to form a line afterwards and thank our speakers. They always like to hear from everybody here. What else we got to do? Don't forget the meeting after the meeting. Hang out with us. If you're struggling, see anybody in this group. There's just about everybody cares, and everybody. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. So that's truly what this group does. Anyway, Alan B. next week. We got a nice way of closing if you care to join us, and that's a wrap. Great job. Take a moment of silence. Do with it what you like. If you care to join us, we'll end with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our